Yeah. So when it comes to requires versus deserves, this is a more subtle distinction. Um, each non-attending child demands and deserves. It's partly because of demands. That is, a demand is something that it's more than a request. They call on something. Um, deserves is something that in a moral or ethical sense that they're entitled to um, that response. So demands and requires an individual response. Firstly, requires and demands could almost be synonyms in some cases. I require a response could be a way of saying I demand a response. But also, um, it's not about necessity. It's so much as entitlement, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so requires actually implies that the whole situation here, um, the child requires an individual response. The requirement probably couldn't come from the child. It would have to come from the situation.
Oh.
If it came from the child, it would be another way of saying that they demand it. So it would end up being tautological or repetitive. But if it comes from the situation, it could be different. So requires almost works here.
So
Just
I will add.
implies something
Yeah.
else. It's another dimension to the sentence. No, only if the child might say, I require ice cream. I
I
need ice
require ice
cream.
cream. I need ice cream. Yeah.
But as any parent will say, you want ice cream, you
Yeah.
don't need it. So the situation might mean that each child requires ice cream. So if you're a catering company and you're deciding how much ice cream to buy so that each child can have the ice cream when it comes to dessert time, then the situation requires it. The child can't really require it in the same way unless they were demanding it, and then it would be, yeah, it's a very subtle reason. It's a quite a complex reason why this has to be deserves, or why it should be deserves rather than requires.
Let me show you why we choose that one. Again, I have to show you here because when we check require, I know that it's very basic, but it said that need something or make something necessary. So if you require any further information, please call blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's not up to the child to decide
Oh, okay.
like whether something is required. It's up to another person's judgment or a situation to decide that. And that's probably why it doesn't quite work here, because it's implied that the child is the one requiring something.
I got it. Yeah.
Whereas this is when you put it in alongside demands, it implies that like a demand can come from a child, and also the state of being deserving, they deserve something that can belong to individual children. But honestly, requires, I might have gone with requires in my first draft if I were writing this.
No.
You could say that if you were talking about needs, that
Oh.
is, and the need isn't really determined. I guess they're talking in a slightly different register to needs. They're talking about demands on the one hand, that is what these sort of individual subject is asking for, maybe in a forceful way, but also what they're entitled to. Whereas need is a little bit different to both of those things.
Okay, so
Yes, the
okay.
child requires food. The situation tells us that
So,
the child requires food.
the situation, okay, this situation.
Yeah,
It should be basic needs, not a toy, for example. If you go to the shopping mall,
yeah,
okay, I need a
yeah.
toy. So we
But
cannot say,
you might have a child demanding a toy, and you might also decide that they deserve a toy.
but not require a toy.
Yeah.
Okay. The situation requires, okay, I got it. Perfect. Amazing.
Overweight 11-year-old. So, the child is embarrassed by their body, and if they change for PE is physical education, is usually what it stands for. And so that it means like sports, and usually you don't do sports or physical education in your typical school uniform. You get changed into sports clothes. So this is a situation where a child has to get undressed in a change room alongside other children. And if they are conscious of their body or self-conscious about their body, for example, because they're overweight or people have teased them, I don't know, maybe they've got a birthmark, or maybe they've got an extra nipple or something. Whatever it is, this situation means that other children will see their body as they change clothes.
So when we say that identifiable factors, does that mean that extra nipple or whatever, as you said? Because to be honest, I didn't know the meaning of these ones.
No, so they're talking about, so earlier on they're saying that there might be some identifiable factors in common. So there might be some common reasons why children don't go to school, they don't attend school. That is something like anxiety or social interactions. It could be about bullying. They might be common patterns that happen again and again, but that each individual child will actually have individual requirements. So, and they're saying that each child should be treated individually. So, if your parent is dying, that might be a good reason not to go to school for a while. But so might anxiety about how other children are going to treat you. You might be being bullied, or so might boredom. I guess each of these issues requires a different response, though, which is what the point is, that you would need to think about each of those situations differently. Even though the feelings the children might have are similar, they might all be feeling anxious, they might all be feeling alienated or disconnected from the school.
Yeah, Adam, this one is very important. Yeah.
Yes, you could be embarrassed for somebody. That is, you're embarrassed on their behalf. If you're embarrassed about or by something, it's a source of embarrassment to you. But if you're embarrassed for somebody, it implies that, let's say that your friend gets up at karaoke and sings really badly, but seems to think that they're very good at singing.
Which is true.
You might be embarrassed for them, especially if they don't notice how embarrassing it is, what they're doing. Yeah. Be embarrassed by them if you invited them along and your other friends blame you for their terrible performance.
Yeah, great. Thank you.